Friday morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm Maria Bartiromo, and I hope you're having a good morning. It is Friday, March 14th. It is 8:01 on the East Coast. President Trump will host New York Governor Kathy Hochul today at the White House. They're discussing a natural gas pipeline that could save families thousands of dollars in energy costs. Here's the president yesterday.
It will reduce the most expensive energy almost in the world is in New England, because they have no way of getting it there because it's been held up by New York. And the whole of New England and Connecticut and New York, the energy prices are through the roof. And this one pipeline will save per family $2,500 just on heating and another $2,500 on everything else. So the energy, by just a simple pipeline going through an area that wants it, an area that's not a rich area. It's actually a very poor area. We create jobs and everything else. And families in New York and Connecticut and New England are going to save $5,000 a family.
In fact, a new Fox News op-ed says that the recent launch of the National Energy Dominance Council is expected to increase energy production and speed infrastructure permitting. The president has an opportunity to turn destructive Biden-era policies into tools of his America First agenda. Joining me now is the 17th Secretary of Energy of the United States, Chris Wright. Mr. Secretary, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Maria.
And you were in that meeting yesterday with the president and the NATO chief. Can you tell us about this pipeline? What are the odds that the president can get this through? Can the states stop some of the president's ideas on energy expansion?
Oh, I think it's highly likely that this pipeline, there's a couple of them actually get done. It's just such a win-win-win. You know, this will lower costs for people in the New York area, for New England. Not just heating costs, which is a big deal. Old houses are heated by fuel oil. Natural gas is just so much cheaper, and it burns cleaner. But it also lower electricity prices, which, of course, everyone would cheer for that as well, and allow businesses in New England or in New York City area to expand and grow their businesses and grow more jobs. So it's like no one loses by this. But silly politics of several years ago stopped these in the first go-round. But I think it's quite likely these pipelines will be under construction before this year's over.
Wow, well, that is big news. Look, Mr. Secretary, I was reading your speech the other day at the CERA conference. You had a wonderful speech and interaction with lots of energy executives at that CERA summit. And I want to get your take on that, because you said natural gas is the largest source of home heating in the United States. It's rapidly growing petrochemical industry and the largest supplier of processed heat for manufacturing steel, cement, countless metals, semiconductors. The list is long. Where are we on all of this? Because the president has issued a number of executive orders on energy. They all seem very positive for America, but will they be in place long term? What can Congress do to make sure that those executive orders are codified into law?
Oh, I think once we swing back this pendulum to common sense on energy and focused on the American people first, and not some sort of political agendas that don't work so well for the American people, I think it will be hard to go back. If you get across the country, people have lower cost energy, more job opportunities, and a little bit more common sense, I think it's going to be hard to campaign 4 or 8 years from now. You know, we're the team of expensive energy. We want to go back to making things inexpensive and pushing industries overseas. I don't think you see a lot of political support for that. There will be specific codifications in the law, so some of it will be permanently enshrined. But I think the attitude and the focus on the American people first, I think that'll become infectious.
Well, I mean, it could become infectious, but we need it as a law. We need it codified, because you know better than anyone, these energy executives make investments for 20, 30, 40, 50-year periods. These are long-term contracts, and they're putting a lot of money in the ground to actually excavate, et cetera, et cetera. So is it going to be in place after President Trump? 4 years later?
Oh, I think the answer to that is yes. Number one, at the Energy Department, we're permitting a lot of liquefied natural gas export terminals. This ships gas around the world to our allies, grows America's balance of trade. And the other thing, Maria, one of my colleagues, Lee Zeldin, the EPA administrator, announced a number of bold actions yesterday. And maybe the biggest one is this endangerment finding. Congress has never been able to pass a law that says, hey, we should explicitly put a tax on carbon fuels to make them more expensive, which they wanted to do in the past. So through a court system ruling and a twisted logic that somehow U.S. greenhouse gas emissions were a risk to the American people, they decidedly are not. Lee Zeldin and the EPA has decided to re-look at this rule. So we'll re-engage with the science and the data and all that. And the data will drive us where the data goes. But I think it's likely you're going to see some permanent changes for the positive that'll be very hard to challenge, just because they'll be popular and they'll be reasonable and they'll be based on numbers.
Well, it's a good point to make, because we spoke with Lee Zeldin yesterday on this program, the EPA rolling back all of those climate change policies in what it calls the biggest day of deregulation in American history. So let's go through what you just said is 31 actions on the docket, including rolling back electric vehicle mandates, reversing air quality standards to support manufacturing, small business, reducing regulations on power plants and the oil and gas industry. Here's Lee Zeldin with me yesterday.
We heard from the American public loud and clear when they voted on November 5th that they want economic relief. They want to unleash energy dominance. It is important for us to be bringing back jobs. We want to help President Trump at EPA to accomplish his mission, his mandate that the American public spoke loud and clear on last November. These 31 historic actions that we undertook, yes, is the largest deregulatory announcement ever made in U.S. history. We're proud to do it. We're proud to lead it, and we're going to get this across the finish line.
So in a practical sense, Secretary, what will this mean for business, for markets? Because I know that under the Biden administration, they had rules on top of rules. I mean, you had to come up with your emissions risk as a customer and as a customer of the customer. All that's being rolled back.
Yes, indeed. Again, it's just a return to common sense. Like I heard in your words, because it's in the EPA words, the rollback of clean air standards. That's a little misnomer, although it is the words. With the rise of natural gas over the last 15 years in the United States, we've had dramatic improvements of United States air quality and water quality to the cleanest of any of the industrialized nations on the planet. That's a fantastic positive. The original Clean Air Act was about making the air in the United States cleaner. That's an admirable goal, and everyone supports it. The results have been dramatic over my lifetime, but then they've been taken further. They're not really Obama's rules, Biden's rules. They weren't really about clean air. They were about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which are different than pollutants. They didn't drive much reduction in greenhouse gases, but they made it very hard to do business in the United States. If you can't build a factory or manufacturing plant in the United States, it just gets built in Asia, where it's powered by coal instead of U.S. natural gas. And those blue-collar jobs that are well-paying and critical to our communities have been exporting our country. President Trump wants to bring them back. We want to reindustrialize America, bring jobs and opportunity along with clean air and clean water right here in the United States.
Well, I love that. And I know the other day at the CIRA conference, you said, I am a climate realist. I've been studying, speaking, and writing about climate change for over 20 years. But the tariff conversation is also overlapping the energy conversation. I mean, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says that her province wants to support Trump's energy agenda, but she's warning that they are looking for customers outside the U.S., including Asia and Europe. Alberta is Canada's largest oil producer, supplies the majority of the country's exports to the United States. You say if the U.S. could reach a deal with Canada to avoid oil and gas tariffs, maybe that looks different. So are you going to exempt any tariffs as a result of this partnership on energy? What does the deal look like?
Look, a brief look back. Yeah, a brief look back at President Trump's record, not just his previous term, but his record in business. President Trump is a master negotiator.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing is the middle of a negotiation, right, Sal? Salvos being lob both ways. Behind the scenes, there's very serious, thoughtful dialogues going on. I think we end out at a great place. Everyone just got to hold on for a little bit and let this negotiation get to the end. But I'm quite optimistic about where things will be with America for our trade and our trading partners, and that it'll bring more opportunity, not less opportunity to Americans, and much needed price relief. That's coming.
But you're going to need Congress involved, aren't you? You've got to codify these things. As I mentioned, the long-term nature of these contracts are important because the oil companies want to make the investments, but they can't make an investment if things are going to change in a couple of years. I mean, look at the price of oil this morning, and you're right, oil is way down from the highs. President Trump is focused on the price of oil and focused on interest rates. He wants both down. The International Energy Agency says that global oil supply will likely exceed demand by about 600,000 barrels a day this year. Mr. Secretary, you're seeking up to $20 billion to replenish the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Where does it stand? And is it fair to say that as prices go down, you're going to be buying oil to fill up that strategic reserve again?
Yes. Yeah, the strategic reserve was drained, half drained, just for political reasons, for the midterm elections. That's exactly what you should not do with a strategic petroleum reserve. And Maria, to your other point, you're right. Of course, Congress has to get involved here. Congress will be involved here. There will be changes in laws that will codify some of this. But a lot of the great damage to the American economy has truly been done by the deep state. That's why it's so pernicious. It wasn't passed by Congress. It wasn't supported by the American people. It crept in the deep state starting early in Obama's first term. Yeah. All of that stuff needs to be rooted out. Let's do things that the American people support. Let's be explicit and out front about what the trade-offs we're making are. But that's not what happened in the Obama and Biden administrations, and we've been suffering with that ever since. So we're going to clean out the deep state and make congressional changes.
Secretary, before you go, real quick, assess the need and the demand on oil and natural gas right now, given our hopes and dreams about AI and data centers.
Oh, it's critical. As I said, the last 15 years, we've moved American industry abroad. The next energy-intensive industry is artificial intelligence. This is critical, not just to economic opportunity in the United States, but for our national security. It is critical that we lead in artificial intelligence. China is going full bore at this as well. It is critical that the United States lead this, and the only way we can lead in it is if we bring all the energy needed for these data centers right here in the United States. We can do that, but this is a 180-degree pivot from the last administration.
Secretary, it's great to have you. This was a great conversation, and we so appreciate your time, sir. Please come back soon.